Good morning. It is 9:30 and I would like to call the April 27th County Council meeting to order. First item of business is the approval of the agenda. A couple of things that I'll go over to begin with, and then I'll open the floor. Firstly, if you flip to section 9, we have 9A, D, B, C, F, and then E. We're going to correct the numbering on that. So the order goes 9A, D, B, C, F, E. Not the 9.1 that's listed on page 38, we're going to renumber as F. Because having two Ds just doesn't make sense. The items then that must stay on for discussion are items 4.1, 4.2, item 5.2, item 7.5, 7.7, 7.8. I'd like to add 9.1C and 11.1W, 12.1, 12.2, and I think the CAO has 12.3 advice from officials. Is that correct, CAO?
That's correct, Mr. Reeve.
And that is Section 21. Sorry, 21?
Section 24.
24, sorry. Section 24, advice from officials. Are there any other items to add? Councillor?
I would like to add 9.1E. Thank you.
E or okay. And we said 9.2. Any other items? Councillor Holland.
Thank you. I'd like to add 5.3 and 7.6.
So 5.3 and 7.6.
Yeah, please.
Around the table, any other items before I repeat? Councillor Gerlich.
Yes, 7.6. I would like that to be moved to session.
Under what authority?
Well, I disagree with the recommendation. I'm going to order to microphone.
Yeah, please turn your microphone.
I think in order to flesh it out and get the proper information, it requires some discussion that should not be for public consumption.
Okay, so we'll leave it on the agenda, and at a break, perhaps we can have a discussion under what section of the FOIP Act that fits to determine whether it's eligible to go closed.
Okay, thank you.
So the items that we have on the list at the moment, item number 2, item number 4.1, 4.2, 5.2, 5.3, 7.5, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, 9.1C, 9.1E, 11.1W, and then all of section 12, that's 12.1, 12.2, and 12.3, section 24.1, advice from officials. Councilor Cromwell.
Good morning. Motion to approve as amended.
I'm not ready for that. Is there any other additions or omissions or deletions? Now, are you willing to move a motion?
Yeah.
Councilor Cromwell has moved that we approve the agenda as amended. If there's no discussion, all those in favor? That is carried 9-0. Your motion is adopted. As our delegations are not scheduled for some time, the first item of business is 5.2. And if you would jump forward to that in your agenda.
Mr. Reeve, sorry, the administration is sleeping at the switch here this morning. Should have asked during the approval of the agenda to have this item moved on the agenda until after section 12 closed session. Item 12.3 is going to speak to some changes in the budget. And
is someone willing to move that we table this? Councillor Wallach has moved we table this item until after section 12.3. All those in favor? That item is adopted 9-0.
Thank you very much,
the item is
Mr.
tabled
Reeve.
until after 12.3. The next item of business is 5.3. Councillor Holland, you asked that to be on the agenda. Do you have a motion you'd like to make?
Yes, thank you. I'd actually just like to ask a question before we look at the recommendation.
We normally take a motion first, and then Councillor Wallach, would you like to move a motion?
I'll make the recommended motion, please.
Councillor Wallach has moved that the policy 2600 health and services personnel recruitment be rescinded. Discussion, Councillor Holland, will come back to
Thank
you.
I'm not familiar with the current committee with regards to whether or not we have, the committee offers some sort of financial assistance or incentive to recruitment of physicians. So is there something that's there? Are you able to share what that is?
Yeah, currently right now we have for physicians a $3,000 bonus-ish that they can use for finding housing, rentals, like startup costs, basically.
Okay.
Stuff like that. So
Did you say, I'm sorry, did you say 2,000?
3,000.
3?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that listed in a policy somewhere that is on the books?
It's part of our committee commitments.
Okay.
So I don't believe the committee has a policy. I'm not sure. You would have to ask the town.
Okay. So we don't have a memorandum of understanding or terms of for the policy quite yet. I know it's a new committee, so terms of reference, anything like that. Okay.
So it wouldn't be in our terms of reference. No.
So where I'm at, I'm opposed to rescind at this time until we have a full on out replacement and understanding of what is available.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Hearing none. If you're ready for the question is on the adoption of the motion to rescind policy 2600, health services personnel recruitment assistance policy. All those in favor? All those opposed? The count is 6 and 3. The motion is adopted. Next on the agenda is item 7.5. I brought this to the agenda specifically so with no objections to the recommendation, but to suggest that this is one that it's appropriate that council maybe discuss priorities or make sure we have a common alignment on the things that might get discussed at that meeting. The items of shared interest like we would do when we meet with the Village of Boyle or the town of Athabasca. So we can take a motion to accept the recommendation, but then I think in the discussion, we should just get some clarity about where we're at. Councillor Mins? Okay. Councillor Mins has moved. We accept this for information. Is there any discussion on that event? Councillor Holland, the floor is yours.
Thank you. In February, at the February Community Transportation meeting, we had a discussion with regards to inviting our summer villages to come aboard with the community transportation if they so wish. So I'm wondering if that's something that can be added to this meeting for discussion. I realize there isn't a formal motion from the committee. However, it was a discussion to go forward. And so I'm wondering if that can be added.
In my personal opinion, that seems very reasonable. Because there would be a lot of work that would need to go on either way. Would you be prepared to come and speak to it at that meeting? Or if not, to fully brief Councillor Mins and myself, because I think both of us intend to.
I would like to consult with the committee before we decide who attends first.
So one or the other.
Right.
Okay, so either you will brief us or you'll show up.
Absolutely.
Okay. Other discussion? Councillor Wallach.
I think just coming on board with the multiplex and the healthcare retention committee as well could be topics of conversation.
Multiplex will be an interesting at the time that this meeting will occur, the agenda for the committee of the whole will be published. And so I thought it would be reasonable as well to let them know that that agenda exists and that the fire services review as it is will be in that agenda. Just to give them a heads up that those documents are there and let those councils point it out to them to have a read. And if there's nothing else, no further discussion, I think you're ready. If you're ready for the question is on the adoption of the motion to accept the administrative report for information. All those in favor? That's carried 9-0. The motion is adopted. Item number 7.6. Councillor Holland, you asked that to come onto the agenda. Did you want to start?
Thank you. With regards to the subdivision endorsement extension request, I would ask that this be placed into closed.
You need a reason.
I don't have the documents in front of me, so again, it's information.
I'm going to ask for a 2-minute recess, and then can you disclose to me what it is? And we'll try to.
Mr.
Okay,
Reeve, we have that information for yourself and for council.
Okay.
It's section 17.1. And it's disclosure harmful to personal privacy.
Okay, so Councillor Holland has made a motion to enter into closed session under section 17.1, disclosure harmful to personal privacy. Is there any discussion? Councillor Mins?
Could we possibly move this to, and we go into close or do we do it now?
I think the agenda is so short today that
Oh, okay.
You could make a motion to table, I guess, and that would supersede Councillor Holland's motion till after, but I don't think this is a long discussion, so I don't think it'll inconvenience either our media or communications coordinator. Okay. So on the question, the adoption of the motion to enter closed session under section 17.1, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried 7-2. The motion the motion is adopted, and we need a couple of seconds to we have left closed session on a motion from Councillor Gerlich, and the vote was 9-0. Was it that? No, it was Councillor Mins to leave closed session. Councillor Gerlich, you had a motion you wanted to make as a result of the discussion in closed session under item 7.6. At the break, you told me you wanted to move that we direct administration to respond to the applicant, notifying her that a 1-year extension has been granted by council.
So moved.
Councillor Gerlich has moved that council provide a 1-year extension to this applicant. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, if you're ready for the question is on the adoption of the motion to provide a 1-year extension. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is adopted and the count is 7-2. We're at item number 7.
Mr. Reeve, our delegation, 10 o'clock delegation is here.
Our 10:30 delegation is here?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good because we're at 7.7 and we can't address that until we talk to
What's that?
item 4.1.
Well, there's
One.
I don't think they're all here actually yet.
So we will postpone 7.7 and 7.8, given that those need to follow 4.1, 4.2. Next on the agenda is item number 9.1C. That I put on. So this is a follow-up letter from Minister Dreeshen regarding the meeting that occurred at RMA. And I added that to the agenda to question to ask if any councillors felt compelled to make a motion to direct administration to send a letter expressing our concerns around the Highway 63 road rescue and requesting an opportunity to meet as early as possible.
Mr. Reeve, if
Yeah.
I may submit to the Reeve and all members of council, I had a conversation yesterday with Janice Romashishin, who is the executive director of grants and education property tax. As you know, we're expecting the writ to be dropped on Monday. So she gave me the heads up that our request for the extension on the grant for the Highway 63 rescue is now in a holding pattern. They will be sending a request for decision to the new minister as soon as the new minister is sworn in. And we're expecting to have a response from the province with regards to additional funding by the 1st of July.
Okay, so given the critical nature of this grant, do we think that it's still wise to keep additional pressure coming on the various ministers in charge of that type of stuff? Or do we want to, I put it on for discussion. We've heard from the CAO. Otherwise, it would be appropriate to entertain a motion to accept this letter for information. Councillor Cromwell, Councillor Gerlich, your mic's on. Were you wanting to speak? Well, we'll go one age before beauty.
I don't understand why they would want to postpone this till July and give a new minister a chance. There should be a good understanding of what is at stake. And that decision should probably be made before the election.
Like you read the news and see all kinds of checks getting handed out right now. I would have thought this would have been a good opportunity too. Councillor Cromwell.
Though understanding that they are coming into that term and the information the CAO has provided, would we not have enough faith that he put that need forward and, let them know how important that is to us? And I don't know if writing a letter would do any more or come across as overly pushy, being as the CAO has just talked to them the day prior.
Different departments, but Councillor Chemzik.
I'm always a fan for application.
Councillor Wallach.
I guess, is this the right minister to be talking to? With the emergency minister being probably in charge of this?
So the idea would be to send a letter to the currently Minister Ellis with Emergency Services, which is what was discussed in the meeting with Minister Dreeshen. And so there was kind of this idea that we would follow up with them. Obviously we all recognize the writ's going to be dropped. Nothing happens during the election period. My thinking around bringing this to you was getting the letter in there anyway, dated before the drop of the writ, so that because once there's a new minister, everybody will be jumping in to get an appointment. And if we can send a letter to whatever that minister is saying, we're following up on our letter from April 27th, like to be more at the front of the queue, to get in front of that minister than trying to fit in with everybody else. Councillor Min's hand is waving.
I totally agree with you regarding that, Mr. Reeve. I'm a very advocate person on communication and information, and this is one point where all of a sudden, exactly, get the letter in there, then we can revert back to that letter when it comes to the new minister.
Councillor Anderson or Kapitanek or Holland, I don't have either of you haven't commented. Do you want to weigh in, or does someone want to just move a motion? Councillor Anderson.
I would move to direct administration to send a letter to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services to brief them on the importance of the Highway 63 Road Rescue Service and the grant funding to continue that service.
Thank you. So there is a motion on the floor to send a letter to the Minister of Emergency Services to brief them on the concerns and request a meeting. Councillor Holland, do you want to discuss that?
I realize that this is a grant through Athabasca County, but we do have neighboring municipalities that this impacts as well. So I'm wondering if we should also be asking those neighboring municipalities, Lac-La-Biche, the RMWB, if they would also like to advocate as we are for this.
Do you want to do that after, or
Yeah,
seems like a good, sorry, it seems like a good strategy. And I wonder if that's one of the things we want to wait for, or.
Well, I'm wondering if this is something, again, of this importance before, like you mentioned, the writ drops Monday, that maybe, I don't know if there's time to reach those, or if that's a separate motion that we should make, but
Probably be a separate motion.
Yeah, but I'm thinking it would be beneficial that we have more than just one municipality. Maybe in the village of Boyle, town of Athabasca, the more the merrier.
Okay, so there is a question on the floor. Is there any further discussion on that question to send a letter? Councillor Bullock?
Didn't we do this last month?
We didn't send it to Minister Ellis because, well, sorry, I don't know if he did it in April. I didn't see that in the minutes.
I feel like it was in a closed session.
Then I wouldn't know about it. But again, a letter to the Minister of Public Safety. It's sort of the follow-up from the meeting with Minister Dreesen, especially because Minister Ellis's department will have received a copy of this. So to me, naturally, they'd be expecting us to reach out to them. So if you're ready for the question is on the adoption of the motion to send a letter to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, briefing them on this issue and requesting a meeting at the earliest opportunity. All those in favor? The count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted. Councillor Holland, you'd like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to have administration invite our neighboring municipalities to include Village of Boyle, Town of Athabasca, Lac-La-Biche, the RMWB in this advocacy as well, please.
Councillor Holland has moved that we direct administration to reach out to neighboring municipalities to ask them to advocate on this issue as well. Is that a fair recap?
I should include summer villages. Okay. I don't want to forget these guys.
Discussion. I'll lead the discussion and say I would personally be opposed to doing that at this exact moment. I'd prefer to wait until that's one thing that I'd like to wait on based on building relationships with our neighbors and it's based on an update that I'll provide you later. I wouldn't be in favor of reaching out to them right now until we've had more chances to have more face-to-face conversations with them.
I'm just wondering about if we could actually discuss this at the tri-council meetings and we're going to the Summer Village meeting, stuff like that. If we could discuss it then through the election, and all of a sudden then we.
So you're amending the motion to add it to the tri-council meeting and carry on?
You betcha I am.
Councillor, okay. Councillor Cromwell, I saw you wave. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And, I think Councillor Holland was actually on a very, very good point there. And I think hopefully Councillor Mims might think about what I'm going to say is his motion still owned by him.
No,
but to have our neighboring municipalities that are very much impacted by that service, and with the amount of passion and effort that you're putting into it, Reeve, it would be prudent, in my opinion, to get the municipalities that are also involved to jump on board with this as you're trying to push your issue forward. I don't think you have to build a lot of relationship to go help us help you keep your residents safe as they travel. I don't think that takes a lot of, sitting down for coffee to get a point like that across. I think it would be prudent to invite our neighbors that have used and relied on strong emergency services out of the Wandering River area for a decade to have that continue. And I would be in favor of Councillor Holland's original motion without the amendment to put out the request and go, can we get your support right now in the time where it would be most valuable to come in and go, back us up, help us, help you, help each other. And I think she was on a very, very strong point right there.
Okay. So other comments, speaking to the amendment or the motion? On the question of the adoption of the amendment, to direct the discussion firstly to tri-council, and the meetings that relate with our summer villages. Are you ready for the question on the adoption of the amendment? And again, which is directing it to our neighbors through the tri-council meetings or the multi-council meetings. All those in favor? All those opposed? So the count is 6-3. The amendment is adopted. On the main motion as amended to reach out to our neighbors to ask them to advocate on our behalf, but to do it through the multi-council meetings. On the adoption of the main motion as amended. Is there any further discussion necessary, I guess? So if you're ready for the question, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and opposed? You're in favor, you're yes. Okay, so the motion is adopted 7-2.
I say 6 and 2 doesn't work.
Does it work? Okay, now our delegations are here. Well done, council. We've managed to have the discussion timed perfectly with the start of the delegation. Ms. Blair or CAO, do you want to invite the delegation in?
Do you want me to get waters?
Would you be willing?
Oh, very good.
Good morning and welcome to our council meeting. I'm Brian Hall. We haven't had the pleasure of meeting, but our kind of traditions and patterns, I mean, I'll share that with you and then we'll come into the delegation. So normally council introduce themselves, and we'll do that a couple of times when you come back, just till we all get to know each other. And then when it comes around to you, then the floor is yours. Councillor Kapitanik's bringing you a drink in case it's a bit dry. With our neighbors, with the RCMP in the village and the town, regularly they come and speak to us and provide updates on what they're working on and how we can work together. Council generally has been pretty open and supportive of collaborative working relationships that benefit the entire region. And I think it's fair to say, feel these kind of communication sessions are good to help make sure there's good communication so that we can be in a position to assist if possible you and you know what we're thinking as well. So I'll start the introductions and then we'll work around. On my far left, we have the recording secretary, Ms. Blair. Seated beside her is our interim CAO, Mr. Pat Vincent. Councillor Anderson, do you want to introduce yourself and we'll go around?
Good morning. I'm Councillor Ashton Anderson and I live in the Boyle-Caslin area.
Good morning, Joe Gerlach. I represent Division 1 in the south in the Rochester-Perryville area.
Good morning, Natasha Kapitanik, Division 2, Collington, Minnook, and New Pine Creek.
And once again, I'm Brian Hall. I'm elected in Division 4. Our council elects 3 from the table, so we all are elected in the region and then look after the county.
Good morning and welcome. Gary Cromwell. I'm up in the far north, Wandering River, Brainat, Blue Jay areas. Thank you very much for being here, and don't worry, we'll be nice to you today.
Good morning, Camille Wallach, Division 9, north of the river.
Kelly Chomsik, Grassland at Warren Prosperity areas.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm Tracy Holland, Division 5, which is east of Athabasca, Paxton, Parkview, Jumping Deer, many subdivisions along the way.
Good morning, Rob Mintz, Division 8, Baptiste Lake Island Lake area.
Where's yours?
So I'm Travis House.
Oh, sorry. There's a button in the middle. Just touch it and the microphone over here.
Travis House. I'm Sergeant with the Alberta Sheriff's Highway Patrol. And our office is at the Atmore Vehicle Inspection Station on Highway 63. We cover quite a large area, Athabasca County being just one of the counties within our unit. So I'm not sure if this is just an introduction or.
We'll do the introductions and then you can come back.
Yes, just Travis House, Sergeant with the Alberta Sheriff's Highway Patrol.
Thank you. Thank you, Sergeant.
Sergeant Lee Simpkins, I'm with the Boyle Athabasca Traffic Unit, so I look after the traffic members that are stationed in Boyle and Athabasca, and we cover everywhere in Athabasca, Boyle and Lac La Biche.
All of Lac La Biche County. Okay, the floor is yours.
Sure. I don't know.
It's pretty informal, like it's
Sure.
okay.
A little bit about myself. I'm a 15-year member of the RCMP. Was mostly posted in E Division, which is British Columbia. Been posted Dawson Creek, 100 Mile House, Fort Nelson, Terrace, Prince George, and now Boyle. Prior to this, I've dedicated my entire career to be an impaired driving specialist, and that's what I am. I do everything from drug recognition expert, so I can do drug impaired driving, to breath tech, and I also teach all those courses. So very near and dear to my heart because there was a 5-year-old girl or 4-year-old girl that was killed in Ladner many years ago in 2007, Alexa Middlear, and I dedicate my service to her. What I like about traffic, I've been in traffic for most of my career, is what we do, and the sheriffs can probably attest to it, is that it's tangible. So at the end of the day, our job is reduce roadway fatalities. And since being here I got here in January of 2022. I know there has been some fatalities on the roads, but there hasn't been a lot. We can't stop them all, but we do put a good dent in them by being proactive. And that's what I try to my guys to do, is be out there and be proactive. If a homicide detective could prevent homicides, they would do it. And that's essentially what we're out there as traffic members. That's what we're doing. We're trying to prevent those unnecessary fatalities.
Are there any things in your business plan for the upcoming cycle that you want to share? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, we have a rotational schedule, and one of the things is that we have offered up if the guys, my crew's not working, that they will be offered overtime on the long weekends, because usually the long weekends are the big ones. I have rescheduled them for one, but there's obviously money from the government for those initiatives, especially stuff like counterattack season and those things around December, and National Impaired Driving campaign, National Impaired Driving Day campaigns with throughout the country. So they so far everybody signed up for the long weekend, so there will be long weekend coverage for us. We're basically mandated to patrol like the numbered highways, and that's one of the difficulties I think we have here in this area. Is there's so many, and it's new to me because we don't have those in BC, and I'm BC born and raised. All these different township roads, range roads, cutoff roads, all these roads, and it's hard to be everywhere, and we can't be everywhere, but we try, and then we rely on the public too, right? So we get tips of. I heard you mention Brain Ant. I didn't know where that was until my guys got a tip that there was some party going on up there, and it was kind of off the beaten path. But I sent my crew there, and we were successful in intercepting one impaired driver that night. So if one impaired driver is off the road, that's a bonus. So
It's a win.
So we will go into those areas, but we just can't be there all the time.
How big is your crew?
Well, on paper. I'm supposed to have 1 corporal and 3 constables in Athabasca. Currently, I have 2 constables here. And in Boyle, there's supposed to be the sergeant, which is me, and 4 constables. I have 2.
Okay.
So projected by this fall, it could be just myself and 2 constables in the unit, depending on staffing and stuff like that.
Because of transfers.
I had one guy that's promoting out to Peace River, and another one that's going to promote lateral down to Drumheller. So I'm going to potentially lose 2. So I could be down to just myself and 2. On paper, there's supposed to be 9 of us. And the rate of attrition right now with the RCMP in an entirety is kind of behind the 8 ball, because a lot of the members that had service and now have their best 5 years since we had our retroactive pay back to 2017 are now retiring. And currently at RCMP Depot, the troops typically should be running with 32 cadets. And I got word that the troops that are on base right now, I think there's maybe half a dozen. They only have 8 cadets per troop. So that's it's a bit of a shortfall there. So
it's challenging. I appreciate that. And I, you know, when we regularly speak with Sergeant Paprese and Staff Sergeant Hall and their reporting, you know, we talk about their numbers and their how full their staff complement is. And so it's been a pleasant, I think, for all of council to hear that they've been relatively fully staffed. And so I'm
yeah, like the general duty side of the house is, I mean, they're the backbone of policing. They take the frontline calls and tied to the radio, where as traffic members, we're not really tied to the radio. We're free to go about our day, but yeah, those will always be fully staffed before us, for sure.
Okay. Anything else you want to add or comments? And then we'll loop back at the end after Sergeant House has spoken, and council will can ask some questions too, and we can kind of engage a bit differently.
No, I brought some stats from March. Okay. I don't know if you guys want to hear about stats, but sure.
We like to celebrate your successes, and you know, I know sometimes we see emails from Sergeant Hall or Paprese about successes they've had, and I think you know, it's important that council is able to hear them. I mean, the press is often in the room, so it gets out that way too, and it's a chance to brag to the community about the good work you do.
Yeah, so one thing that came into effect December 17, 2018 was the mandatory alcohol screening under Bill C-46, which I'm very familiar with because I had to explain it a lot. My previous job, I was the impaired driving coordinator for all North District of British Columbia. So one thing that we're doing, we myself and Constable Banks did a media release through the Advocate here downtown about the mandatory alcohol screening, because there was some confusion with drivers whether they needed to provide a sample of their breath into a approved screening device. So our members in Alberta, and I think the sheriffs are the same, that every traffic stop, whether it be you getting pulled over for a seatbelt check or a burnt out headlight, you will be providing a sample of your breath under that legislation. So we mandatory every driver that we stop. So we're not discriminating against anybody. We're strictly mandatory alcohol screening every driver that we stop. So last month in March, my members conducted 329 mandatory alcohol screenings in this area. Of that, we had 3 impaired drivers. So I think the message, and it's good. It's not good for our stats, but it's good that you can see that the public has learned, and this stuff's real. And you know, prior to mandatory, you know, I myself would get more than this in 1 month prior to mandatory alcohol screening. And now that we're mandatorying people, we're getting less than we did the old way. Wow. So to me, I think the public has learned, and it's the message has gotten out that it's not acceptable. So in this area last month, or in March, we for seatbelt wise, we did 46 seatbelts. So I see it quite often that people aren't wearing their seatbelts, and it's a huge thing. With the old statistic is with a seatbelt and an airbag, you had a 55% chance of survival in a major frontal crash. Without a seatbelt, you have 0%. So seatbelts are big in my world. Been to too many crashes where if a seatbelt was worn, person would be still with us. Distracted driving is another one that's big on our agenda, and those ones are a little harder to find. You know, people are you know, hiding them down in their laps or whatever. It's hard to see, but last month in this area we got 25. Wow. And aggressive drivers, so people speeding and running stop signs and that sort of thing. We did 112. And then last month in total, we did joint check stops with the sheriffs as well. We did a total of 8 impaired road checks within this area for the month. Wow. So we're out there looking for this stuff. not so successful all the time. And my members dealt with 5 warrants last month as well. So they intercepted 5 warrants on the highway. So warrants, yeah.
Well done. Do we want to save questions till Sergeant House is back, or do you want to? Let's stay focused then for a minute with Sergeant Simpkins maybe, and then if council, if you have any questions specifically about the I'll just kind of work around the table rather than randomly, but I mean, I'm shocked personally that you're still having issues with seatbelts. It's been 30 years or more of.
Yeah, and one thing that we noticed when we discussed, and we're going to start to enforce, is the window tint on the front driver's windows. That to me is another big concern. And where it becomes a big concern is that in the darkness at night, especially where motorists are, say, taking a right or a left-hand curve, and they can't see people on the sidewalks because it's so dark, and that's when pedestrians are getting run over, right? So we're going to start clamping down on the tint.
Window tint and tail light cover.
We'll do some education to begin with, and then it'll be traffic fines.
Okay, Councillor Mintz.
Thank you for this information. When you said, well, it's not good for your stats, finding less impaired drivers is awesome.
Yes.
I think it's
it is.
Yeah, I understand that comment though, totally. And with the window tint. Yeah, because I see a lot of vehicles driving around, they're just blacked right out. And to me, it's kind of ridiculous when you get into that situation, even for yourselves, even walking up to that vehicle, you know, like it's crazy.
Yeah, totally. It's unsafe for all of us to walk up to a vehicle and not be able to see what's in there, right?
Yeah. The other thing I'm wondering about is the wide tires. The tires that are sticking out way past the wheel wells and stuff like that, like that look to me absolutely ridiculous. Is there anything that can be done about that also?
Yes. That's my understanding. They can exceed the wheel well. And if certain height, they need mud flaps as well.
Okay, thank you. Great work.
Councillor Holland, did you have any questions you wanted to, or accolades?
Accolades. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all that you do. I know the dangers that you're in every single day, and I can't thank you enough for keeping our roads safe and all those traveling on it. So thank you.
Councillor Chemzik.
Just a note with the wide tires, it usually goes at the window tint. As an observation. I'd also like to thank you.
You
Mr.
can't
Simpson.
stereotype though.
I'd like to thank you for also attending the RCMP town hall in Grassland as well. It was great information and it was great to see you all out there. Thank you.
Councillor Wallach.
Just thanks for what you guys do. It's great.
Sergeant, your stats are still impressive. 25 distracted driving, 8 check stops between you and your peers, 5 warrants. Very well done for the numbers that you have. We do appreciate, you know, stats help budget helps get members in, and the amount of pressure that puts on you and both of your respective departments. You know, one of the things that you mentioned that I wish you were able to attend the Wandering River one, but I spoke in your behalf on that. As residents they actually brought up the Dance and Brain app, and we got the comment of, well, how come there's never a cop out here when you need one, but we have a party and they show up? So between Sergeant Proposi and myself, did a little bit of an explanation on the difference between a traffic unit and a detachment unit and kind of how your mandate works. So a lot of good education that way. Very happy to see all of your roadside screenings. And, you know, looking at the news, and we watch what's going on, and the number of officer involved shooting and incidents are greatly on the rise here in our country as a whole. And where Canada is now is very different from a Canada 2 years ago in what you're watching in the news. So even more for both yourself and the sheriffs, the ones that are out there on that stretch of 100-kilometer highway, usually alone with backup, not as close as you would like. We thank you very much for what you do. We thank you for the dedication to that young girl that passed away. And there are people that have very similar stories, and that is always very deep and near to the heart. So to both of you, thank you for what you've done and you continue to do for our community.
Councillor Kapchanik.
Yeah, just I guess echoing the sentiment around the table. Highway 63 is a well-known stretch of road, and even since twinning, we know that we may have seen a lot less headache, I won't say combined vehicle collisions. It's still a dangerous stretch of road with like no emergency services and the weather that you go out on and the travelers. So just thank you for doing all that you do, especially in winter.
Councillor Gerlach, any comments, accolades, questions with your microphone, please?
It's nice to meet you here today, and I'm very glad that I haven't met you before, and I hope not to meet you. But anyway, no, I do appreciate the fact between the RCMP. I guess we see more of the RCMP in our local division, but it's nice to see them out there, because oftentimes you're distracted, you're thinking about other things, and you don't realize your foot is quite as heavy as it is. And I've appreciated a couple of times just seeing the lights flash a little bit as a reminder to slow down. You're kind of on the borderline, and that's as good as a ticket as far as I'm concerned, because I mean you're letting people know that they're kind of on the edges. So I really appreciate I really appreciate the way I've been treated by police officers when I have been stopped for one thing or another or checked, and it seems like a common sense conversation works very well. And I've been very happy with what I've seen from the RCMP. So again, thank you.
I think the lights would be a little bit better than a ticket personally, but Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd echo like that. It's been incredible to see the reduction of impaired drivers in our community, and even just going to community events, you notice so many more people arranging for a ride in advance, things like that. And that's been a very big change in the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years. Somebody who sits on quite a few committees and hosts a lot of those events, we plan in advance for it so much more, just because people are looking for that and see it as a priority. And it's really nice to see that. And as somebody who's gone through a few check stops, I'd say that the demeanor of the officers is very positive at those. And I really appreciate that. Like, I usually have a toddler in the back seat. Every once in a while she'll get stickers or whatnot. Like she loves the police to see them. And I really appreciate having those positive role models in the community that the kids can learn the proactive approaches from.
I'm not sure if it speaks to how you drive that she sees them a lot, but
no, that's part of our mandate too. Like myself, been in the school a couple of times here in Boyle, and I've reached out to Pomondon School as well, and I like to go there and do talks about impaired driving, seatbelt usage, anything I can educate them on, because it starts young. And back in my days in 100 Mile House, I had a good rapport with the law teacher, and I would go into the law class and talk about drug impaired driving, and I would actually do drug evals on a student that I thought was smoking pot, and they'd fail the eval, and other students would get to see how this person failed. So education's part of our mandate as well. So
thank you. Sergeant House, I would offer the floor to you and share or talk about yourself. And
put my microphone
thank
on.
You, Sergeant Simpkins.
So like Sergeant Simpkins here, I'm not originally from Alberta. I'm originally from a small town in Ontario, Midwestern Ontario. Finished college, moved out to Alberta, to Lake Louise. So I got to live in the mountains for a few years. Got established there. It's pretty fun. Started my career with the government of Alberta in corrections. So I worked at the Edmonton Remand Center for a few years before getting on with the commercial vehicle enforcement branch at that time. So yeah, in 2014, I got hired on with the commercial vehicle enforcement branch as the new recruit for the fancy new inspection station that was built on Highway 63. That was opened in 2017, but I began working in Lac La Biche in 2015. So I've been in the area since 2015. I'll kind of give us where we are now with the Sheriff Highway Patrol. So back in the last provincial election, you may have heard about the Rapid Response Initiative when rural crime was hot topic, still is. Back then, there was the traffic sheriffs that would have worked with the RCMP traffic units. We were called Sheriff Traffic Operations, and then there was the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Branch. So the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Branch, we were our own business. We were Walmart, and the traffic sheriffs working with the RCMP were Canadian Tire, like two totally different entities. The government looked at it and said, well, we have the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement who all have Traffic Safety Act authorities, the same authorities as the traffic sheriffs. How can we merge these two outfits together and provide a better service to the public to combat some of the crime and tackle traffic, work in a better capacity? So the Sheriff Highway Patrol was formed, and that was formed 2020, right at the start of COVID, I think, is when it was officially adopted. With the change to the Sheriff Highway Patrol, both parties, so both the former traffic sheriffs and the former commercial vehicle enforcement officers, we went through I don't know how many weeks of training down in Edmonton to upgrade for new authorities. So with that change for the rural, to help with the rural crime, we all received criminal code authorities, so the same authorities the police would have, but we're limited in our policies to fines committing offenses. So throughout the course of our traffic duties, if we come across something that's criminal in nature, we find it. It's like fishing, like we can catch it, we can clean it. And the whole idea of that is to let the general duty members in the detachment handle their police matters. So that's kind of how it's freeing up resources. Instead of us stopping something and coming across something, having to call a member out who may be busy somewhere else, that was one of the ideas they thought. So as a sheriff now, we all have criminal code authorities, so we will investigate criminal driving offenses. Everything else in our authorities is listed to fines committing. So how that translates into safety for the communities is if we're on patrol and we see a criminal act taking place, whether it's a property crime or whatever, we can act on that situation now, and we're fully covered by the law to support us in that. We also received the alcohol impaired driving training to support the mandatory alcohol screening change that took place in 2018. Further on to that, now we're moving into the drug impaired driving realm of the world, not just alcohol. We're moving into the drug impaired driving. So will be this standardized field sobriety testing. We will have some drug recognition experts eventually. Sergeant Simpkins here is a drug recognition expert. So if it's a situation arise, like we can work together and call him out, and they can attend and help us. So and along with that change too, we should all take note is our rural schools and our rural communities. We've all heard what happens in the United States, and knock on wood, that never happens here. But as a Sheriff's Highway Patrol, we all are trained in rapid intervention training. So if there's an active shooter or an active threat going on, you can count on us to show up. It will be called if we're close by, we'll be showing up to that. So we've already had that happen once recently down in Smoky Lake. There was an individual walking with his rifle down the street near the school, and we got called to respond down to that. So we all are armed, and we would be responding to those type of threats taking place in the community to get involved and take care of that situation. We are a little different than Lee's outfit in the sense that we have kind of three priorities we do. We have our general highway patrol services, the impaired driving aspect of things, and then we also do the commercial vehicle inspections on the highway. So around here, there's pretty well logging and oil field and anything going up to Fort McMurray with the heavy haul. Like we're up here, we do it all. So we have to manage our time of making sure the commercial vehicle inspections are taking place. We're still getting out and doing the check stops and doing the general highway patrol work. My area is a lot larger than Sergeant Simpkins's area, so we cover basically Highway 2 south, Highway 827 is kind of the boundary, 813, like this Thorhill County, Athabasca County line to the west is our boundary, all the way to Highway 2863, so Radway. Then our southern border would be Highway 28 all the way over to Saskatchewan. So Cold Lake, trade like to the border there. And then we'll go, our unit used to cover Fort McMurray to this Northwest Territory, like to the highway basically finishes. We do now have 2 members in Fort McMurray, so we pretty well will handle 63 up to Mariana Lake area. And then Calling Lake, Wabasca, that's our thing. So we got a big area to cover, and every area has its own unique challenges and attention that gets needed. So I will say on the traffic front, like I'm not stopping too many locals doing speeding or whatever. For me, my experience is it's the travelers from the city to Fort McMurray to work. They're the ones that are just passing through the small communities that don't care. They literally work 3 weeks in a row and just want to get home to their families. So it doesn't matter what you're telling them. Just give me my ticket and let me go. Like they're have a bad attitude towards it. So back in, I think it was 2015, the fines were raised to try to curb some of that mentality because of the money being made. And it helped a little bit, but I still think there's some room to grow on that. But that's good. It's the locals aren't not stopping the locals as much. And I have some friends that are with the OPP traffic units in Ontario, and they say the same thing, that the high flyers that the traffic people they're dealing with are all the people from the city coming up to cottage country that don't live in that area. So it's, you know, as far as the impaired driving goes, yeah, we go out and do lots of check stops. And when we say it's bad for our stats, yeah, you can spend a couple nights out on a weekend looking for impaired drivers. You don't get one, which is a good thing. But you're like, I just did 3 days. I don't got really anything to show for it. But you do. At the end of the day, there's no impaired drivers on the road. So, yeah. We are moving forward as the Sheriff Highway Patrol to the rapid priority 1 calls now. So we're going to be getting further training. I think we got about another month of training to go. We're going to be receiving some more tools to do the job safely. And then we'll be moving into the calls for service for priority 1 calls. So if there's a property crime or some serious taking place in a rural area that it's going to take a while for the general duty member to get to, and we're close by and working, then we'll be showing up first to help intervene with that and help with those concerns from everybody. So as far as statistics go, I didn't print them off, but I can just say off the top of my head, I review them quite frequently to make sure that we're staying on top of things. So we've issued, there's 4 of us, myself, and I have 3 officers that work out of our unit. So we've probably issued close to 500 traffic tickets so far this year in the first quarter. We've conducted probably, let's see, close to 400 commercial vehicle inspections as well in that time. And as far as the impaired drivers go, we haven't had too many. I think we've only probably issued half a dozen sanctions, which is a good thing. Of those half a dozen, 2 have been in commercial vehicles. Sorry, 3 have been in commercial vehicles where there's 0 tolerance to operate a vehicle with any alcohol in your system or drugs. So, and then I think two of the other ones have been graduated driver licensing, so novice driver with alcohol in their system, and there's zero tolerance for that. So yeah, we went out and did some check stops last weekend, and we're tipped off about a pit party taking place, and we showed up in the right times, and everybody was shocked to see us, but they're happy to see us. So kind of like what Sergeant Simpkins was saying, is we have a lot of township roads and county roads, like non-numbered highways. And as my patch on my shoulder says Alberta, I'm concerned main priority is the provincial network of highways and their infrastructure. That's why we have the tiered law enforcement, county officers and town officers that can that should be kind of their areas to take care of. But we do have jurisdiction throughout the whole province. So we do get out on the areas that are more frequently used by traffic, but we tend to stick more to the provincial networks. So yeah, large area to cover. And again, it's kind of a common thing with short staff, but I know with the sheriff branch, we are going on a big recruiting drive here. So hopefully my office here and at the Atmore Inspection Station, we're supposed to have upwards of nine members. So hopefully we're going to expand from 4 to 9. That would put more boots on the ground and able to tackle some of the complaints we get with the traffic.
I'll maybe open the floor to questions. It's shocking the size of the area you have and the limited number of members covering it. It's almost like Fish and Wildlife where 2 guys are covering a quarter of the province. So we'll start this way and work our way around. Maybe Councillor Anderson, do you want to any questions, accolades, or comments?
Why do you insist on putting me on the spot? I don't like this spot.
Left to right, right to left.
No, like that's incredible, especially if you only have 4 members currently working out of your office.
Yeah.
To do 500 traffic tickets or 400 inspections. Like, to me, that just blows my mind to see that you guys are out on the roads that much and able to inspect that many people or connect with that many people.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the things you see, but I'm very thankful that you're there.
Councillor Grilla.
Just curious with impairment, is the comparison between alcohol impairment and drug impairment, have those stats kind of changed or moved at all, or kind of what are they? In my experience, they've kind of remained the same ever since the cannabis legislation's come in. In my opinion, it's, with the cannabis being legislated, and now it's socially acceptable, before it wasn't. I haven't seen an increase or a decrease in impaired driving by drug as a DRE. Since being here, I've done 2 drug evaluations in the year and bit I've been here. So,
Councillor Kapitanek. Councillor Cromwell.
Well, thank you very much. Sergeant House, you have a very expanded authority, which is what we're learning here in our room today. Not just the CVE aspect in that act, but highway patrol, and then criminal code and getting into the rapid response. And, coming from a more isolated community myself in comparison to some of my friends here around the table, it is very encouraging to know that we have a quote unquote police station only a 20-minute drive away, and how helpful that has been to the county as a whole, but also to the northern end of the community. And I know that yourself and traffic, our county CPOs and detachment Fish and Game have all come together on many occasions up there to work with off-highway vehicle things and issues that have been going on, and how much we value and respect the time that you do put in to your very expanded umbrella. So just wish you good luck with your upcoming training. And again, thank you and your crews, both of you. Please pass on our deepest thanks for what they do. And hopefully we can get a few more bodies into both of your locales. So the one question I will ask to the 2 of you is, our press is here and we're live streaming to the world. As both of you are looking for number, who pays better? I'm sure the people would like to know.
The RCMP does.
Thank you
Not
very much.
now.
Thank you very much for that plug, Sergeant. We appreciate it.
Counselor Wallach.
Thanks again. Work.
Counselor Thompson.
I don't want to repeat too much that's already been said, but it's nice to know that training is a priority and it keeps going ongoing. And it was really interesting to know the area that you guys have to cover. It's quite extensive, and thanks again.
Counselor Holland.
Thanks very much. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate what you've shared with us here today. And being at the Boyle Town Hall was also very informative and educational. And one thing that I really am impressed about is how all of the different departments, from Fish and Wildlife to our CPOs, to yourselves, to the sheriffs, to the RCP, how everybody works so well together and in conjunction. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Counselor Mintz.
Yeah, pretty well the same thing. It's great to see everybody working together, especially with Fish and Wildlife. And that'd be great to see more members also. It'd be awesome to see that. One thing that is really good to hear is that the vehicle inspection, commercial vehicle inspection is still ongoing. I know you probably, as inspectors, you probably get, now sheriffs, you probably get pulled. I was worried a little bit of that, about getting pulled more onto the highway to.
Yeah, the inspection numbers are down. But we've lost a lot. We've lost some staff in the change there. Let's face it, like there was some people that liked inspecting vehicles and they didn't want to take on the new, more law enforcement proactive approach that we were moving towards. So they moved on to greener pastures. So we are down on inspection numbers, not saying from our area directly as a whole throughout the province, but that's because of lack of staff. And the way to cure it, to get them up, is just with our recruiting is going to get those numbers back up. Because again, like Sergeant Simpkins said, it's all tangible. Like there's a stat that for every unsafe vehicle we can take to service off the highway, there is a number that says we're preventing this much in damage, right? Part of that too is monitoring the weights and dimensions. I mean, like, we got to protect our infrastructure around here. We know how the roads are and how they never get fixed. So yeah, I would like to see some 300 million for Highway 63, but that didn't happen. So yeah, it's a juggling act. Like say they add more to your plate and then that takes away from other stuff, but we just try to balance everything we can.
If I could just, so the gentleman sitting in the weigh scales there, waving trucks through and commercial vehicles through, and that is a sheriff.
Yep.
So are they ever going to look at maybe having a combined workforce where all of a sudden you got mechanics, you got scales people there, you got, instead of just having sheriffs, they could have some other component to it, to where they're working in that building.
No, I don't like. So the building is owned Alberta Infrastructure, Alberta Transportation, and then as the Sheriff Highway Patrol, we're kind of like a tenant in the building. Like it's not a Sheriff Highway Patrol owned building, but to do the commercial vehicle inspections, we're all trained throughout the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance training, so the CVSA, and the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance is Canada, US, and Mexico, so it's North America wide. And the Sheriff Highway Patrol is the lead agency for Alberta to participate in that program. So the training that we receive is a standardized training. So I could go down to Mexico or down to Texas and do the same inspection. It's going to be the same up here as it is down there. The only difference is I may not be familiar with how their legislation's written to enforce things down. So we don't need to have mechanics, because again, we're just doing we're trained to do inspection to a certain level. And I mean, if we find that this is wrong, then that's wrong, and then they can have a mechanic come and fix it. So luckily we got lots of local people that can come out it's not always the best ideal place to have something break down, but again, we're trying to stop things from becoming an issue further down the road, right? We do have some members that do have they are mechanics by trade. Like one of our officers, he was a mechanic before joining, so that's an asset to have as well. But if anything, I could see maybe like a conservation officer, fish and wildlife, that's maybe joining together to work out of there, because we have a really nice building and there's lots of room with just the 4 of us in there. So that inspection station is on it. It's the newest and best in the country. And I've driven across Canada a few times, and yeah, it's the latest and greatest. We got some good technology there with the thermal cameras roadside, where we can see if their wheels are hot or braking issues, things like that. We have some brake testing equipment inside the inspection shed itself that can help us look at brake systems on vehicles. Yeah, we stop a lot of people that have driven across the country and they're going to Fort McMurray with their load, and then they get stopped here, and it's like, you just drove across the country with that problem and you're 2 hours from where you're going, and we got you here, right? So and again, we came into an area when we first started working up here in 2015. You could go to the small towns and you find violation after violation after violation, but then you see as time goes on, like everybody learns, there's education and things change, and now we don't see as much stuff taking place, right? Which is good. That's what we want to see, because when it's open, people know it's open, and we get it. People take the K road around, but we can't go chasing after people. Hopefully when we got more members, we can, but it's going to be the game. It's always going to be the cat and mouse game. So,
well, I know on behalf of council, it's great to see that integrated approach between the agencies, and we appreciate the work that goes on in both your offices, and look forward to seeing you again. There's clearly a lot to be proud of in the work you're doing, especially with the limited resources, and that's so hopefully we can make this a regular conversation. With that, I would thank you for joining us. Would like to recess till 20 after on that clock for council, just to recharge your coffees, and we'll cover a couple of agenda items before we break for lunch. So thank you for joining us, and we'll recess. The next item of business would be item number 7.7. It would be appropriate to receive a motion to accept that presentation for information. Councillor Cromwell had his hand up. Councillor Cromwell has moved. We accept that item, the presentation from the sheriff and RCMP traffic as information. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we had a good discussion. I know folks that went longer than we typically go. I think given first meeting, and it's a nice chance to get to know those two community members. On the question of the adoption of the motion to accept the presentation as information, all those in favor? That is carried 9-0. The motion is adopted. Now returning to page 3 of your agenda. We are at item 9.1E. Councillor Kapitanek, you asked to put this on the agenda.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to bring it up out of the consent agenda, just to reiterate what we had talked about at the COW meeting. Was that yesterday? No, Tuesday. Thank you very much. Sometimes the days just run together. And just to really bring attention so that it isn't misunderstood in the agenda, just because one email can create some questions that might not have answers, because we know the answers, because we've had all the meetings in a row and they've continuously been under discussion. But bridge file 13833 in 9.1E discusses the STIP funding not being approved for this year. I wanted to make a note or bring attention to the fact that we remember that for many, many, many years, STIP funding was not a high priority, and and possibly even ever applied for quite a while. And I wanted to really be appreciative of the amount of time and energy the directors and the administration staff put in this year to put in 6 applications. And to see that the government approved 5 of them just shows a testament to how well they worked, how well my colleagues and our other directors have worked lobbying the government for funding for our community. 5 out of 6 applications is amazing to be approved. And I think that we should be grateful to the work that's been put into that. And also point out that we had, on the January 10th County Council meeting, Council did approve to go ahead with the engineering of this bridge. So it is very important that this email does not allude to the fact that nothing is happening. That engineering is still ongoing as per the regulations of Alberta Environment. It does have some very specific dates in which engineering can happen on that bridge. And so if we don't see people out there in quotation marks, that doesn't mean that engineers aren't working. And that we were definitely, it was definitely indicated by Director DeFini that this application will go in again for next year. So whether or not this funding comes to us in this calendar year, work is being done. I think our community just really needs to be reminded that this is on the top of our minds, on top of our advocating, and that the other 5 bridges and culverts that are getting funding from the government are just as important and will be getting done, and very excited to be able to see those approvals.
Are you willing to make a motion to accept this for information?
I would like to make a motion to accept this for information. Thank you for letting me speak.
So Councillor, and I apologize again in the wrong order, Councillor Kapitanek has made a motion to accept the item for information. If there's some discussion, I know the CAO, I will yield the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reeve. Through the chair to all members of council, just wanted to advise that there will be a report coming to council or committee shortly once we have the engineering report, so that we'll be bringing council up to date. That report will determine or outline what the current status is, what types of repairs or recommendations are, and what the costs may be. And so council will be able to consider that matter. And further, the application has already been prepared for resubmission to Alberta Transportation for this bridge under the STIP funding.
And I can report to council in the comments that I also spoke to one of our regional MLAs, and I know, you know, he was disappointed that this particular project didn't get funded. He had asked some questions about it with his colleagues in government. And, you know, there were others in our general vicinity that had important projects that weren't improved. In terms of advice, one of the comments that came to me was that there's this idea that perhaps we should consider whether we go to RMA to have them dig a little bit more into the issues of rural infrastructure funding. You know, is rural Alberta getting its share? Calgary just got a $300 million investment. And I know that's making the news and everybody thinks that's a hockey rink. A lot of that really relates to road infrastructure around those facilities. So they're not necessarily buying the rink, but it's a serious investment in that part of the world. Edmonton, of course, is now going to want some. The STIP pool is reported at about $93 million over 3 years, or I believe the MLA said close to $50 million in this current calendar year. He told me that he had done some work with Minister Dreeshen to advocate that the STIP pool was doubled for this most recent budget, and the Treasury Board declined to do that. So clearly there's not a short-term solution, but the idea is also to float with you, whether, you know, through maybe a separate motion later, if we feel there's any need to look at RMA resolutions that exist on the books and whether we want to potentially advocate for a little bit more. Remembering that STIP funding has been, you know, this pool of money to maintain infrastructure across the province, and the pool has generally not grown rapidly. As the infrastructure ages, we are going to see an exponential rise in need, because many of the bridges in the province are of similar age, and they're approaching that 50 to 70 year range, and so we're going to see, you know, a dramatic increase. So there may be some room for us to push RMA to advocate for a little bit more funding there, and even to validate whether rural Alberta is getting its share, given that while our population isn't dense, most of a significant portion of the wealth that's generated in the province certainly comes out of rural areas. So that's the update I give you on that. Is there any other discussion, Councillor Holland?
Thank you. No, I appreciate your words, and I appreciate your words as well. And kudos to everyone who's working on this and working very hard for it. However, even though we have applications that are prepared that may not necessarily have gone in, I believe that the county can probably, in my personal opinion, look at other avenues that the Collinton Bridge could be made one of our top priorities, that we do not necessarily have to wait for government funding. It's been out for a long time, and it is important in our infrastructure to get that, and not only that, for the community to get that bridge up and going. So I would hope that we are looking at other avenues rather than just further STIP funding applications, that we are looking at something before the end of this year.
I feel confident those will be discussions that come up in committee of the whole and/or budget. Any further discussion, Councillor Gerlich?
Yeah. The federal government has quite a knack for donating so much red tape to any projects that are being done. And I don't know whether their contributions to these projects are even exist. Would that really be the province's responsibility to go after the federal government, maybe to contribute something toward these projects? Because they're certainly contributing to the additional expense with all the red tape, that maybe they should be shelling out a little bit to help with some of these projects. But when you talk about replacing a 5-foot culvert, and it's $250,000, and so much of that is unnecessary red tape.
I think that's certainly something that I would encourage you to put into an RFD, and we can look to advocate for through our committee of the whole discussions. Councillor Anderson, and then the CAO.
Thank you. Further to the comment by Councillor Gerlich about advocating for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to provide some funding for the increased mitigation efforts that they require, which are important. We want to protect our aquatic environments and species, but I just want to note that RMA, well, formerly AAMDC, did have a resolution on their books in 2010 advocating for exactly that. And we may just want to refresh that and push it along again. So something else we can consider.
Yep. So there's some good ideas for committee of the whole. Are you ready for the question? On the question, oh, sorry, I did have you down as on deck. I apologize, CAO.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Reeve. Through the chair to all members of council, the past lobbying efforts of the federal government to provide more funding has come back with the same response time after time. We provide you the federal gas tax, which goes to your local infrastructure. Use it how you deem fit. So any further attempts of lobbying, I think, will result in the same type of response, is that you're getting the federal gas tax. So just
thank you. Are we ready for the question? On the question, the adoption of the motion to accept for information, all those in favor? The motion is carried 9-0, and the motion is adopted. We are at item number 9.2, calendars. To begin with, I think we have May 18th, 5:30 p.m. Tri-Council meeting with the town and the village. On your calendar, Greater North is listed as May 22nd. That will not be happening. That's Victoria Day. There will be a Greater North meeting in Lac La Biche County at the buildings there on the 29th. And on June 1st, Ms. Blair, I think we have the Summer Village meeting, Eastern Summer Village meeting. Is that correct?
I have heard back from the Village of Boyle and the Summer Village of Miwatha. I've yet to hear back from the Summer Village of Bondis, okay. But the two that I did hear from, they both agreed June 1st.
Okay. So we can put that as a tentative, maybe. That's what I have listed on my list of adjustments. Is any other adjustments? Councillor Chamzik, then Cromwell.
I apologize. I made an error last calendar. My Northern Lights is on the 26th. And also FCSS is on May 8th. And June 15th is the town library meeting.
The June 15th is a town library?
Yes. Oh, and sorry, and the 18th as well. Of May.
At what time?
Town library, 5:30.
Okay, so that conflicts with the tri-council meeting?
I'm aware of that.
Okay. Councillor Cromwell.
Thank you very much. Sorry, let me go back to May here. May 3rd and 25th, I have an ACPA meeting, both nights at, I believe it's 5:30. June, Northern Lakes College at, sorry, gotta love changing calendar views here. At 3 o'clock on the, just lost it.
Does anybody else have?
And also crime prevention on June 15th.
Okay.
And I'll find the other one.
Yeah, when you're ready or prepared, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I would like to schedule another committee of the whole meeting for June, and my date proposed would be June 20th.
Committee of the whole proposed for June 20th. Councillor Wallach.
For May 29th, the healthcare recruitment meeting at 10:30. For June, June 22nd, Alberta Hub AGM. And I would like to schedule a policy. Potentially. I was gonna say the 20th.
Would the 27th be suitable?
Sure. That would work. Is that council? 27th.
27th.
Yep. Do we have MPC that day?
Yes, we do. We have MPCs on the 27th, but
to follow, yeah. On the 27th.
So I'll
the healthcare. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Healthcare recruitment.
June 27th.
So May 29th was healthcare recruitment.
Yeah.
And policy on June 27th.
Okay, I was mixing up in June, sorry.
I apologize. I should be repeating them as they come. Any Councillor Mintz?
June 27th, got an Alice meeting. It's gonna be at the multiplex. And
what time?
And I'll be gone from 14th to the 23rd, just so everybody knows I'm not around.
I was gonna say, where's your policy meeting?
What time is your policy meeting? I mean, your Alice meeting?
We're looking at 10 a.m.
So you were going to miss either MPC or the late for Alice side of it.
How long are the meetings?
How long is this meeting? Well, it'll be a full day. That's.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't go to everything, so.
Okay.
Right.
I'm assuming.
Councillor Cromwell, you have more dates?
Yes, thank you. The Northern Lake College would June 7th at noon. And then just a reminder, we were speaking about that asset management. That would be June 8th in Vermilion. If we had people that were going to attend that.
Other Councillor Holland.
Although we're just about finished April, there is a ALT meeting tomorrow. And I was just wondering, is it possible to put a copy of this once it's updated? If that's okay, please and thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Mintz?
I'm just wondering, May 25th is that asset management meeting in Edmonton. And we also have county council meeting would there be a chance? Would anybody be in tune, maybe moving the county council meeting to the Wednesday, the 24th or
the Friday, the 26th?
Friday, the 26th? Well,
The 23rd. Councillor Wallach suggested moving council to the 23rd.
Just after.
23rd.
CAO, are you aware what the?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I know, a bit of a bit out there, but do we expect NPC to be gigantic by then?
No.
Last one was pretty long.
Mr. Reeve, we're not anticipating overly long MPC meeting, so if it lasted for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, that would be my best guess. So have plenty of time for council meeting following.
So there's a proposal to move council to the 23rd. Councillor Gerlach, did you have a comment? Okay, is there council, what do you? How do you feel about moving the council meeting to accommodate the asset management training?
I think it's an excellent idea.
So if there's no objections, council meeting move to the 23rd to follow MPC. Councillor Gerlach and then Anderson.
Like the opportunity to impress everyone. There is an FCSS meeting on the 8th of May, and I got there before Kelly got there.
No, you didn't.
Actually, I already have FCSS written down, so I think she might have said.
I didn't.
Councillor Henderson.
I should have been paying attention.
Thank you. I wonder if the county council meeting that's being moved to the 23rd, it wouldn't be more advisable to put the council meeting first and MPC after the council meeting? Just because one is live streamed, the other's not, so.
Okay, that works for me.
That would be my proposal.
Okay. So the proposals, MPC follows council, and if there's no objections, we'll record it that way and then vote on the calendar. Any further adjustments to the calendar?
Just for information, so if we're gonna want to go to this asset management seminar, we need to have someone throw our names in. Do we throw our names in?
Who's organizing? Is this RMA organizing?
RMA is organizing that.
When's the deadline to enter?
We'd have to look into it, I guess.
Let's bring it back after lunch. We'll find a second to connect on that. Is that agreeable to everybody? Okay. So the calendars have been reviewed. Is there any further questions, clarifications, or adjustments to the calendars that we need to consider? Seeing none, it would be appropriate to have a motion for Councillor Wallach to accept the calendars as amended. Councillor Wallach has moved that. We accept the calendars as amended. If you're ready for the question, on the question of the adoption of that motion, all those in favor? That is carried 9-0. The motion is adopted. Lunch has arrived. I would propose to you we recess until. Is 20 minutes enough, folks?
No, 25.
20? I find 25 a little bit long, but okay. Let's recess until 10 minutes past, and I will reconvene at 10 after 12. An update on the Greater North Foundation. So as council is aware, I sit as a board member in the Greater North Foundation and have been appointed by you to do that. The foundation has been working to establish a capital replacement reserve. They've, in yesterday's meeting, instructed administration to create an RFP for the purpose of contacting engineering and consulting firms to prepare that report. And so that's going to happen in the next couple of months. The deadline for actually making the requisition is April 30th. Of the total requisition did not approve that, and as a result, the requisition will not be made for capital replacement reserve in 2023. But hopefully by the time 2024 comes around, we'll be able to engage in better discussions and move ahead with that. So that's the update on that. It would be appropriate to have a motion to accept for information. Councillor Kapitanek has moved. We accept that report for information. Is there any further discussion? If not, on the question, the adoption of approving that motion, that report for information, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted. We are at a place where we have 45 minutes until our 1 o'clock delegation. We have a couple of items of closed session work to do. It would be in order to accept a motion to enter closed session. Councillor Chamzik has moved. Is there any discussion on Councillor Chamzik's motion to go into closed session? Seeing none, on the adoption of the motion to enter closed session, all those in favor? That's carried 9-0. And the motion is adopted. All right, Jeff, we'll let the council introduce themselves, starting with the Deputy Reeve, and we'll work our way around the table. When it gets to you, take over.
Good afternoon, Ashton Anderson, Deputy Reeve, and I reside in the east side of the county, near Boyle.
Good afternoon, Division 1. Where you want to tell me about the best.
Hello, Natasha Kapitaniak, Division 2, Collington, New Pine Creek, and Minnook.
And again, I'm Brian Hall from, I live down with Councillor Gerlich as my neighbor in the Far Prairie Valley region.
Good afternoon, Gary Cromwell, far north, Wandering River, Brainerd, Blue Jay area.
Good morning, Division 9, Camille Wallach.
Kelly Chamzik, Division 7 Grassland at Morning Prosperity area.
Hi there, welcome. Nice to see you again. Tracy Holland, Division 5, which is Paxton, Parkview, Jumping Deer, Amber Valley areas.
Earl Biz. Hi, Jeff. Division 8. No, that's Lake Island Lake area.
You bet. Oh yeah, you guys can. Everybody can hear me okay? Well, thanks for having me here today to discuss the financial statements for Athabasca County for the fiscal year ended 2022. So my name is Jeff Alston. I'm a partner with Metrics Group, so responsible for the audit services for the county on behalf of our firm. So usually, yeah, well, that clicks pretty good. Okay, usually to begin these presentations, I like to give a bit of an audit overview. So kind of discuss the importance of an audit and why we have it, and really it's to enhance the degree of confidence of the intended users. So those main users of the financial statements being yourselves as councillors, your ratepayers, the province of Alberta, municipal affairs. So those organizations or individuals with a vested interest in the financial performance of the county. As auditors, we express an opinion on the financial statements, so we give assurance that numbers are free from material misstatement. So what that means is that we seek reasonable assurance. So it's a high level assurance, but it's not absolute. So we do not audit every transaction that happened during the year. Also, as auditors, we exercise professional judgment, maintain professional skepticism, so questioning mind. We stay alert to conditions which may indicate possible misstatement. So in that case, cutoff is a big key area. You want to make sure that transactions have been recorded in the correct fiscal period. Revenue recognition, that revenue is being recognized once services have been rendered. The collectability of accounts receivable. So do you have receivables that maybe require an allowance or are deemed to be uncollectible? And then also in this case with the county here, reclamation liability, making sure that your liabilities are accurate based on third-party assessment and what the expectation is of those costs to reclaim those assets. So again, those are some key areas here, and then as well as a critical assessment of the audit evidence. So have we received third-party confirmation? Are we getting internal work from management? Is there anything that's misleading in that sense? So those are just some areas when we discuss professional skepticism. So on the next slide here is just a summary of our independent auditors report. So page 3 and 4 of your financial statements will have our audit report. So at the top, we'll outline our opinion there that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position, results of operations in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So those are the accounting standards that all local governments report under, all government organizations across Canada. And then when it comes to the basis for opinion, is where we indicate that the audit was conducted in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. So auditing standards are the same again across Canada. So whether you're a publicly traded company that reports under international financial reporting standards, a not-for-profit organization, a private enterprise, or a local government, the auditing standards are the same. It's the reporting frameworks that can be different. The next part of the audit report is the responsibility of management and those charged with governance for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statement. And then auditor's responsibility for the audit, which in turn outlines our objective, which is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. The audit report will be dated for today's date. And then once we get approval, we'll be able to sign that and issue signed audited financial statements. So the next slide here is a snapshot of where the county was at as at December 31, 2022. You'll see your cash and temporary investment position was up about 4.2 million up to 27 from 22.8. So to get there, the county had actually generated positive cash flow from its operations of about $8 million. And then it spent about $4 million on new tangible capital asset additions, leaving $4 million in the bank. With those changes. On the next slide here, your taxes and grants in place of taxes. So what's still owing to the county at year end. You'll see your current taxes were up slightly to $788,000, as well as your taxes in arrears up another $200,000. So those are in line with your allowance for doubtful accounts that also increased by $162,000 as you have some various oil and gas companies on your list that still remain with taxes deemed to be uncollectible. So we do feel that your allowance, is appropriate based on what you're currently showing in your arrears and current balance combined there. Other receivables for the county. So your trade and other, about $550,000 there. Receivables from other government of $307,000. So it's mainly made up of GST of $140,000 and $167,000 owed from other governments. And then provincial and federal receivable of $1.8 million. So that's made up of MSI funds, about $1.4 million. And then your Canada Community Building Fund of $470,000 as those funds were used in the year for capital projects. So back to the statement of financial position, you'll see you have a small amount of land held for resale valued at a carrying cost of $133,000. And that left you with a total financial asset position of $30.7 million, $6.2 million increase year over year from 24.5. So after looking at your financial assets, the next part of your statement is your liabilities. So what the county still owes subsequent to your end. So accounts payable and accrued liabilities, you have general trade or vendor payables of 3.8 million at your end. Last year, you're at 2. So that's where you're kind of seeing the increase there, as well as a couple $100,000 owed to other government versus 134 in the prior year. Your next liability line item here is deferred revenue at 1.3 million. So when it comes to deferred revenue, it's made up of some grants that you had received during the year. So you had received some STIP grants for bridge work to be performed. So 640,000 for one, 448 for another, and then an ACP grant of 300,000. The amounts to be recognized in the year for work performed totaled $1 million. And your MSI was made up allocated towards various projects throughout the year. So in turn, you started with $1 million opening. You got about 1.4 million left to be applied to future projects into the next fiscal period. So when you go back to the statement of financial position, after deferred revenue, your employee benefit obligations, so this consists of vacation and overtime still owing, and then your reclamation liability of 7.7 million. So you'll see a big increase here to 7.7 from 2, as you had a new report done in the year to indicate what the expectation is to reclaim the various gravel pits that the county does use within their community. So based on that report, the cost to reclaim all that would be about 7.7 million. So that has been adjusted for this year to represent the new information that's been obtained. Your next liability comes to contaminated sites. So this is the L. Scott landfill here. So this has been adjusted as well for inflation adjustment to 6%, and as well as for lending rates of 4.87. So you see a little increase here up to 2.8 from 2.7. Another liability that's not noted on here because you don't have any long-term debt, but would be in line with your debt limits. So the county's debt limits are calculated at 1.5 times total operating revenue, so about 42 million. And then a debt servicing limit of 0.25 times operating revenue, roughly 7. So what could be repaid in the year? So again, you currently don't have any debt. So you're within your debt limits, but these are your debt limits based on the Municipal Government Act if you ever were to look to borrow money. Back to the statement of financial position, you'll see your total liabilities of the year of 16.5 versus 8.5, so roughly an $8 million increase. And then the part that's highlighted here, your net financial asset position. So if you were to take your total financial assets, less your liabilities of 16.5, you'd be in a net financial asset position of 14.3 million. So what that means is if you were to take your cash, collect your receivables, pay off your obligations based on the cost as of today, you'd be left with 14.3 million still in the bank. So again, the county is still in a relatively healthy position. Even though you just added $8 million of liabilities, you were able to increase your financial asset position by just over 6 to kind of maintain the same amount you had year over year there. So after looking at your net financial asset positions, you have your non-financial assets, so tangible capital assets of 82.3. So here's a breakdown of the change in there. So you started the year at 84 million. You added 4 million of new additions. So $2 million for various road construction projects in the year. Machinery and equipment. There's 3 graders included in that additions, and as well as with vehicles, a couple Tahoes in there with some other items. So for total additions of 4 million. And then when it comes to amortization, based on the accounting policies for the county, 5.5 million is the amortization expense in the year. So from an accounting standpoint, what that number represents is kind of the usage of your total assets in the year. So you'll have assets that last 50 years, 10 years, 20 years. When you purchase them, they go into your tangible capital assets, and then a percentage of them based on the useful life will get expensed into your, will be amortized into your expenses. So the 5.5 represents the uses of this whole pool. So if you see by adding 4 and using 5, you've kind of, you could say you kind of replaced what was kind of taken from there, maybe a little less than what was used, but it's a good way to kind of see if your assets are, if they're maintaining the cost there. So sometimes you'll see a large amount of amortization expense over years, which would kind of be indicating that your assets are kind of getting older, the useful life's kind of going down. And then if you don't see a lot of additions coming in, you're obviously not replacing those. So again, it's just from the accounting side, one way to look at it. Obviously, engineers and asset replacement plan can tell you other things, but from an accounting standpoint, this is just a good way to kind of look at your assets. So after that, other non-financial assets, inventory for consumption. So you got 2.4 million of gravel there, 775,000 of equipment and chemicals. 3.2 million total, and then prepaid expenses of 360,000. So items that you paid for in this fiscal year that pertain to the next fiscal year, leaving you with 85.9 million of non-financial assets. So you would take your net financial asset position, which is C of 14.3, add the 85.9, you end up with an accumulated surplus of 100 million, which is down from prior years, actually 3.5 million, which is indicates your annual deficit that you incurred in the year, which I'll talk about later. So when you look at your accumulated surplus, it's broken out into 3 different categories. The first one being unrestricted, which went down 3.9 million to 1 million from about 5. Your restricted surplus, which is up to 16.8 from 14.5, so a $2.3 million change there. And then your equity and tangible capital assets. So how much of your accumulated surplus is actually tied up in physical tangible capital assets of 82.4. So if you were to take your total restricted and unrestricted surplus, that totals 17.8 million, which indicates your kind of your cash component of your reserves, and then your tangible capital asset portion, which is indicative of the 82 million. So when I talked about a $3.5 million change year over year, of that change, cash was affected by 1.6 and the reserve changes, and tangible capital assets represents 1.9 million. So although the deficit is 3.5, more than half of that is tied up due to tangible capital asset decrease, which would mean the difference in your amortization versus your additions in the year. So it's not a full cash net out of 3.5 million. It's only 1.6. So. So the next slide here, after looking at your statement of financial position, page 5 of your financial statements will be your statement of operations. So your operating revenue, so how much revenue is generated by the county in order to provide services to the residents. So your total revenues for the year were about 28 million, up 1.4 million from prior year's 26. Net municipal property taxes makes up a large component of that. So 22.4 versus 21. So you did see a 7% increase in your taxes year over year, 3.7% due to rates, 3.1 related to the assessment change. When it comes to user fees and sales of goods, that was up slightly in regards to additional recreation revenue that was recorded in regards to the multiplex there. Government transfers for operating at 1.6 versus 2.4. Last year, you had most grant funding in there, so manipulated municipal operating stimulus funding. So that's why you see a decrease year over year there. Investment income up to 700 from 210. So this has been pretty common across the organizations I've been seeing or auditing. Now with the interest rates up and you have some cash on hand, you are definitely seeing better return on your investments than you have in prior years. And hopefully that will help with, I'm sure, the added cost of everything going forward that's going to be coming as well. So definitely you want to make sure that you're earning what you can on your investments as rates are now close to 5%, if not more. So when it comes to rentals, increase there slightly, again, in regards to the multiplex consolidation. And that left you again with 28 million versus 26, or a $1.4 million increase. Compared to budget, you budget 28.6, ended up at 27.9, or a $700,000 change there. This pie chart here just kind of gives you a breakdown of your allocation there. So net municipal property taxes do make up 82%. Last year, they made up 79. Government transfers for operating made up 9 last year, now down to 6. And then a bit of an increase here in the investment income as it now makes up 3% versus 1%. So after looking at your revenues, your expenses, so what those funds were used in order to provide for services. So based on function or department here, transportation services was up to 20 million from 15. The main change year over year there is in regards to the gravel reclamation liability change. So because the change there was just over 5 million, that's the cause of your change here in your transportation services year over year. When it comes to recreational services, that's up to 2.9 in regards to the consolidation work from the multiplex. Other changes year over year, obviously your protective services are up to 2.6 million from 2 million in regard to your police funding increase year over year there. So that's been accounted for. And then, yeah, so that left you a total of 33.8 million versus 27.9 or 28 million. So a $5.8 million increase, which is actually in line with the gravel reclamation change, which is about 5.7 million. When it comes to budget, this chart here, the line represents your budget, and then the dark blue represents your current year, and the light blue represents prior year. So you'll see transportation services was above what you budgeted for, again, in relation to the reclamation liability change. All other categories are about at or below budget. Your environmental use and protection, you had budgeted 4 million for the L. Scott landfill reclamation that didn't occur. So that's why you see a big gap there, with the budget being much higher than the actual, as that work was not completed there. The next slide here, so what the funds were actually spent on versus based on departments. So materials, goods, and supplies up to 10 million versus 4.5. Again, the gravel reclamation, I know I've said that lots. Salaries, wages, and benefits, 9.3 versus 9.3, below budget though, as there still continues to be vacant positions. Contracting and general services, again, the budget difference there related to the L. Scott landfill reclamation. And then you also had more transfers to local boards and organizations this year than you had in prior years or in the past, up to 878. So everything is pretty much in line with what you had budgeted for. And then the increase year over year is really in regards to the landfill change, making up the 5.8 million. So, the gravel reclamation. So if you look at total revenues, net expenses, you end up with a $5.9 million operating deficit. The gravel reclamation change was 5.7. So again, you were pretty close to zero there. You then add in your capital items. So other income of government or government transfers generated for capital of 2.5 million. That's 2 million from MSI and about 470 from your Canada Community Building Fund. Leaves you a total other income of 2.4 million, and then an annual deficit in the year of 3.475 million, which is a change in your accumulated surplus from 103 down to 100. So in summary, you did end up with a deficit this year again, this year, last year you had a surplus of 3.5 million, mainly in relation to the gravel reclamation change. Net financial asset position still at 14.3 versus 16 million. So a $1.8 million change. So still a good position there as you were able to increase your financial asset position. I have an audit findings report as well, but in summary, there were no significant control deficiencies, no unusual accounting policies or estimates. We have some unrecorded misstatements and no significant difficulties on our end to note to council as well while performing our work. Just want to thank Nicole and the team for helping us to complete our job as auditors and providing us the information that we needed in order to complete our work. And I guess if anybody has any questions on this part of the presentation, I can definitely try to answer them.
Council, any questions? CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Reeve. To the chair, to Jeff. On the taxes and grants in place of taxes receivable page, and it's not numbered, but you had made mention about the uncollected municipal taxes from oil and gas companies. Yeah. The fact that the province has now put in some legislation when these companies go to renew their licenses or their permits, they have to pay municipal taxes. I'm anticipating that many of these unpaid taxes are actually going to be collected now and will be reducing the amount of uncollectible allowance.
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that'd be, I kind of hope that it's definitely common in this area, you know, surrounding municipalities that I do audit, like, you know, Woodlands up to the MD Greenview, stuff like that there is this kind of allowance and allocation of these oil companies. Some of them do end up on multiple, I see the names around. So hopefully, yeah, you do get more collection on that side in order to operate, or there's some more accountability there.
Through the chair again to Jeff. So have you seen any evidence of this having companies paying their taxes because they've had to recently renew their permits? I know it's in 2023, but anybody reported any?
Not that I've seen yet on my end. Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Reeve, the second question I had under trade and other receivables, we talked about provincial and federal grants receivable. So I'm in communication with Alberta Municipal Affairs yesterday. We received a grant for $10,000 for mediation on an IDP process. We didn't have to go to mediation, so we got $10,000, and I don't want to return it to the government. So the intent is to apply for amendment to that grant so that we can keep the money. Something you would advise us to do?
Yeah, I would advise that maybe you discuss with them on, can you use this grant funding towards another project that would be in line with the program that you applied for, that you received the money for. Yeah.
Excellent. That's what we're going to do.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. When we reviewed the regional multiplexes last financial statement and their financials, we were informed that the assets of the multiplex society are split 50% between the county and 50% to the town. Mm-hmm. Can you point out where the assets that the multiplex purchased last year are recorded in this financial statement?
That you would have purchased in 2022?
Yes.
Well, I'm assuming that they would be included in the machine and equipment number. But I'd have to check with Nicole, but I'm not sure how much additions there was at the multiplex.
I'd appreciate the clarification on that, just because at that time we were told that it wouldn't be on the multiplexes statement.
Yeah, no, they'll be
because
in here.
It would be here. I want to make sure that it's here and not just lost in the translation from
Yeah,
one to the
it'll,
other.
if, so from that perspective, it would have been purchased, I'm assuming by the county and the town would share 50% of it. So whatever one is paying would obviously receive money back from the other one. But if it meets the requirements of the county to be considered tangible capital assets for the county, it'll be included in your additions. It potentially could even be expensed because it doesn't meet the definition of your policy of what should be a tangible capital asset, because the multiplex has its own, you know, it has a different threshold probably for what it would, well, it doesn't have any capital assets because in essence, they're all either on the county or the town, but depending on the size of the organization, thresholds or policies, they might be different between entities. But if the county or then and the town were paying for those what they would deem to be tangible capital assets, they'll be in your financial statements somewhere. Yeah.
Like, I would like to see that number.
Yeah.
Of what those assets are that have been recorded in here for the multiplex. Thank you.
We can get that, Nicole.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and we'll provide that information to all of council.
Other questions from council for Mr. Alliston? Wow, I fully expected,
It's like,
When it's good news, it's hard to question.
so, Jeff, the reclamation liability, just for clarity, that went up because we made a decision to more thoroughly investigate and prepare for that future cost.
Yeah, there was a new engineering report prepared on those gravel pits to identify what the cost would be to date if you were going to reclaim them to a certain level. So that was the cost based on the current, economic conditions and kind of what's going on. So it is good practice to make sure you are updating these things. I always say at least within 5-year period. We can always adjust the reclamation based on inflation changes, but as things change in the world, cost goes up on stuff like that. It's good to make sure that that estimate is accurate. Sometimes, I've seen, especially in the landfill closure, post-closure, sometimes I come in, they're working off a 10-year, 15-year reports. You go in and get a new one and you see these huge swings, right? So you definitely want to make sure that, that you are staying as on top of things as you can. So you have the funds to take care of that in the future.
So when in your presentation, we've talked about the net book value of tangible capital assets, and the additions didn't keep up with the amortization by about a 25% factor. So to me, that means we're not replacing assets as quickly as they're worn out. Is there any cause for concern from your perspective there?
Not with a gap like that. Usually if you're seeing, 5 million of amortization and maybe $1 million of additions and you're seeing it over multiple years, it's kind of like, well, are our assets aging out a lot more now? Should we be putting more money in? Why are we, I guess, have such a large amount of amortization with no new assets, no new ones going in? So is our things getting old? Are we gonna have to pay for more repairs later? Are we gonna get into trouble? So those are just kind of the thoughts on that.
Okay. And then the other adjustments to the restricted surplus is some of that, did I hear, was related to the changes in the planning for the Elscott landfill? Or
when it came to your adjustments into your reserves,
the accumulated surplus, the capital reserve numbers up by a little over 2 million.
I don't know if
I think that's related to projects that weren't finished last year that we carried forward.
Okay.
For next year is part of the reason why that is balancing.
Okay, so it's just it's a fluctuate.
Yeah, because it was the capital reserve. So I'm thinking it would have been capital projects. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Those are the questions I have.
Mr. Reeve, just one comment, one question, if I might, to the chair, to Jeff, or to the Reeve and Council. Note number 17, salaries and benefits disclosure, which is page 23 of the financial statements. Just want to point out the event that occurred with the departure of the CEO earlier this year is going to be recorded in 2023. Doesn't show up in last year's statements, just for clarity so people understand. Question I have, Mr. Reeve, through the chair to Jeff, is you would consider this a clean audit
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, well, if we had a qualified opinion, then we would say that it wouldn't be a clean opinion. So we're giving an opinion that it is free from material misstatement, and yeah, we didn't have any significant difficulties, so.
Okay, last question I have, if I may, Mr. Reeve. It has been in practice in the past to issue management letters. Has that practice changed, or am I to expect a management?
No,
letter?
yeah, there'll be a management letter. So it's indicated in our audit findings report that we will issue a management letter with containing some non-significant items. So as we're performing our work, sometimes we come across things or note things that may be, you know, prudent to management to maybe make a change or just to look into, just to some like housekeeping things. But we don't deem those to be significant in the sense of they're in this report coming to council. But that report is available. So if council ever wanted to see it, management can definitely provide it, or we can as well. So
I have to share with you, I was hoping we would earn a gold star and there wouldn't be a management letter coming. I had that happen once in my career when I was at Parkland County. So I was looking for the gold star once.
Well, that might have been when my partner Mike F was maybe doing the audit at Parkland County. Yeah.
No. Maybe it's because I took him out golfing once or something.
That might have been, yeah.
Just kidding.
I have one other additional question or clarification, then give the floor to Councillor Minns. A couple of times you referred to the multiplex consolidation. Can you just maybe elaborate on what?
Yeah, so we do have numbers from the multiplex indicating revenues and expenses that they would have incurred. So they are, your percentage ownership is consolidated into the financial statements in there. With the multiplex, there is no accumulated surplus. So there's not really a change much on the balance sheet, just if it's funding receivable or payable back between you and the multiplex based on a shortfall there. But the operations are represented in your financial statements based on your ownership there.
So, but multiplex is a standalone society. So, are you talking about the multiplex buildings or the multiplex society?
No, the county owns 50% of the multiplex. Yeah, like the organization, like your share. Yeah,
we own 50% of the buildings.
Yeah,
but Athabasca Regional Multiplex Society is a society, and typically societies have society members, but they're not owners.
Well,
I'm not an owner of the Rotary Club.
I think I've had discussions with this with the multiplex. I'm not quite sure what their bylaws say, but technically they're a municipally owned entity that operates recreational services within your community. They're not like an independent charity per se, where they have an independent board. Like it's everything, their funding comes from the county. You have the representation there of 50-50 with the town. Like it's a municipally owned organization from what we could tell from our standpoint, which is why, yeah, like you have a memorandum of agreement that this was set up between the county and the town. So
okay, Councilor Minns.
I guess I'm just wondering, under the salaries and benefits disclosure on benefits, travel and allowances, what's all in that? How does that number come up?
Oh, so what's included in there? Yeah, okay, so then, yeah, no 2 years. So it's just your share of employee benefits, travel and allowance, or payments made on behalf of employees. So that's what the county's paying. Travel, subsistence, pension, healthcare, dental coverage. So anything that's included kind of in that mix is in that category there is benefits, mainly travel and allowances. Yeah.
So meals and that type of thing would be included in there as well. So any of your council expenses that you claim throughout the year.
Like mileage too, or not? Mileage and all that?
No, because mileage, well, if you had a specific mileage claim and it was on a expense claim, yes. But because as we discussed previously, mileage is also included in your salary, that portion of the mileage that you're being compensated for. And I've advised council that they should separate out of their salaries that component that they're getting compensation for mileage, because they're being unfairly taxed for it. And especially without the 1/3 deduction any longer, they're getting penalized by the CRA.
So you get paid an allowance for traveling, or you get reimbursement?
No, it should be an allowance, but it's incorporated into their salary.
So that's included. that's separated in whatever out of box 14 in their T4, right? Like it's indicated in there.
No,
No, it's part of your Ford's income.
Yeah,
it was consolidating to a one number that there's no breakdown internally inside that number. It's just one number that was all encompassing, all inclusive.
Oh, okay.
and it's paid as salary, and so they're getting taxed on
Yeah.
what they shouldn't be getting
Let's say
taxed on.
Probably
So-
the claim expenses against that, but
So we're
Yeah.
working on we're working with council to change that
Changing that
policy and
yeah.
change the honorarium, so.
So
that
as
gets
it relates
fixed.
to the financial statements, are there any additional questions from council? Or the presentation? Councillor Gurley. Look to your microphone.
When you look at the shortfall in gravel pit reclamation, and it goes up by about 6% a year, is it for the deficiencies like
Sorry, for which?
the reclamation
Oh, the reclamation liability, the contaminated site one, or
for gravel pits?
the gravel pit one, yeah.
So is there not a higher inflation rate on sort of the things that the county does than there is the normal?
It could be like, yeah, you can use different, benchmarks as to what you would deem to be most appropriate, right?
If fuel
So-
prices go up 50%, a grader goes up 100 and some thousand in a year, and
Yeah.
those things, it seems like the inflation rate is so much higher than
Yeah.
than the consumer.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, as you're looking into 2023, what would be the best approach to make sure that that number is the most accurate is at the end of that year based on what happened in the year makes sense. So yeah, you can definitely, I've seen municipalities use CPI median. We like to use, actually Bank of Canada target inflation, which is actually much lower at 2%, because that's kind of where the Bank of Canada is trying to keep it at 2%. So we like that, especially for landfill closure, post closure. So you don't get as much swings in your changes. You're really just looking at the discount rate. But yeah, I mean, the inflation could definitely be higher than 6%, depending on what you're, what's, I guess, included in that reclamation cost and those costs involved in reclaiming it based on the swings there in pricing. So yeah, definitely could change that way.
Additional questions from council? So at the conclusion of the presentation, what we're looking to have is a motion to approve the audited 2022 financial statements as presented.
Did you do this on the camera?
Is there,
Or you do it now?
were you intending to go through?
Well,
the
I gotta
other
do this.
documents?
I was gonna do this audit findings report, but I wasn't sure if you guys do it in camera or if you do it in public, but.
Is there
Good to
any
go.
reason that it would qualify for FOIP under the FOIP Act?
Not that I would be aware
When I-
of. No,
when I
I don't
flipped through
think
it, I
so.
didn't
No.
see anything.
I mean, I do a bunch of them in public and I do a bunch of them in camera, so I'm good either way, whatever council would prefer. I don't think there's anything in here that's,
I
bad,
didn't see anything that had.
yeah, so, yeah, like I said,
mean,
I do them in public quite a bit.
The
too, so,
rules on
yeah.
in camera are fairly restrictive and not wanting to like.
Yeah, no, this in public is good. Okay, all right, well, I don't know, I don't know if you have it up there or not, but. I can. Okay, I'll get going. Okay, so this is our audit findings report. It's a little more qualitative information in regards to our audit. So on the table of contents page, if you ever have to get a hold of me, my contact information is in the top left corner. So telephone number and email address if anybody ever had to get a hold of me. On the next page, where it comes to executive summary, really the purpose of this report is to promote effective two-way communication between ourselves as the auditors and yourselves as council. When it comes to independence, we feel that we are independent of the county, so we do not hold economic dependence or have a financial interest in the county. When it comes to finalizing our audit as of today's date, we'll complete our subsequent event procedures. We'll obtain a signed management representation letter. We'll complete our required communication to council, and then we'll obtain evidence of council's approval of the financial statements. From there, we'll be able to issue signed audit financial statements. There were no changes in regards to our audit plan when it came to our audit findings. On the next page, responsibilities, I spoke on this earlier, but just in summary here, we conducted our audit in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. And then our audit was performed in accordance with that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. On the next page at the top, responsibility and management and those charged with governance. Just to note here that those charged with governance council is responsible for overseeing the county's financial reporting process. On the bottom part of this page, materiality. So we use 4% of expenses, or roughly $1 million, as a benchmark for materiality. So what we're saying here is if your revenues were to increase by $1 million or decrease by $1 million, or your expenses for that matter, that a user of the financial statement may have a different view or outlook on the financial performance. So users being, again, yourselves as counselors, municipal affairs of the province, so organizations or individuals with vested interests. So you might have a different outlook or opinion of how the year went if it were to change by that. So again, these are based on auditors' professional judgment. The next page here at the top, audit results. This is where we go over areas that we focused on. We had noted in our audit plan and kind of conclusions of our findings. So our first one here is management override of control. So really the risk here is that management is in a unique position to potentially perpetrate financial statement fraud through the manipulation of the accounting records. So what that means is that manual journal entries could be made within the accounting system in order to say, make sure that expenses are in line with what was budgeted for, or to increase your annual surplus. So to portray a different result than what was actually there. So we use data analytic tools to identify journal entries that exhibit characteristics of this maybe happening. We then test those journal entries to make sure that they are actual business journal entries. So we had no significant findings in that area. On the next page here, revenue recognition. Risk here is that we want to make sure risks or that revenue is being recognized once performance obligations have been met. So we do, again, review your grant agreements to make sure that your costs are in line with those agreements and that revenue is being recognized correctly. So we had no significant findings there. Net municipal property taxes, want to make sure the correct rates and assessments are being used. So we do recalculate your taxes as well as your over under levy. So we had no findings in that area. The next one, salaries, sales and user charges. So here we do testing of individual transactions throughout the year, as well as perform substantive analytical procedures to make sure that your revenue is accurate. So we had no findings there. When it comes to operating expenses, we want to make sure the risk there that there's potentially fraudulent expenses or expenses recorded in the wrong fiscal period. So we do test significant expenses, but we also test non-significant expenses. So we have models that indicate how much we should be sampling based on smaller values to make sure that we are testing the population as a whole and not just large amounts to make sure that there is no material misstatement when it comes to operating expenses. So we had no findings in that area. Salaries, wages, and benefits. We want to make sure that your employees are getting paid the correct rate, but also that that all the employees exist. So we do update our understanding of your processes and controls. We perform a substantive analytical procedure over salaries, wages, and benefits. So expectation of what people should be getting paid versus actual, as well as reconcile your T4s to your general ledgers. So we had no significant findings there. When it comes to cash and temporary investments, so cash definitely is subject to a high level of risk. So we do confirm directly with the bank your financial statement balance, as well as audit reconciling items. So we had no findings there. The next one at the top, receivables. We want to make sure that receivables are deemed to be collectible. So we do look subsequent to year end for payment. So we had no significant findings in that area. Inventory for consumption is a big area. You want to make sure that your gravel inventory at year end is accurate. So looking at third-party reviews of pits, testing mathematical accuracy there. So we didn't have any significant findings. However, we have identified some other matters that we'll bring to the attention of management when it comes to inventory. Tangible capital assets. We want to make sure that your assets are recorded accurately. You might potentially have items in expenses that should be capitalized. You have items capitalized that potentially could be expensed, or your amortization expense could be wrong. So we perform a lot of work in there, looking at tested details for additions, recalculating amortization expense and gain loss to make sure that that's accurate. So we had no findings there. And then the last two here, accounts payable and accrued liabilities. Again, we do perform work subsequent to year end to make sure that transaction in the correct fiscal period. So we had no significant findings there. And then your liability for contaminated sites and reclamation liabilities. So risk here is that you have an inappropriate estimate or error in your calculating of the liability. So again, we assess your third-party engagement reports. We look at the discount inflation rates that have been applied by management. We recalculate these based on the third-party engineering reports, as well as management estimates. So we had no findings in that area as well. So when it comes to significant findings, our audit procedures did not reveal any significant deficiencies in internal controls. We feel that your accounting practices, policies, and estimates are in line with your policies, as well as Canadian public sector accounting standards. We encountered no significant difficulties with our audit that we brought to the attention of council. When it comes to management representation letter on Appendix 2, we'll be able to, once that's signed, we'll be able to issue signed financial statements. And then when it comes to management letter, we'll be issuing one of those, again, pertaining to some non-significant items. The next page here, other matters. So we had identified another matter brought to the attention of council here. This is in regards in our to manual or management entries here. So when we had commenced the audit beginning, we were required to make another 19 management entries while we're performing our audit work. So just kind of indicating there that I guess just we prefer to not have to see more entries when we get started. But I think for the most part, once we got rolling and we got the stuff from the finance team, everything was pretty good. I know, I don't know, March 5th. Yeah, I don't know if that's too early or whatever, but anyways, that was just a comment there, just to note in regards to our when we had started our work. So the next page here, when it comes to adjustments, we were only required to, or we only proposed 5 adjusting journal entries that were made within the financial statements. So the net effect of those was an increase to assets of 116,000, decrease to liabilities of 143,000, and then an increase to your annual surplus of 260,000. So we talked about materiality being $1 million. The entries after the management entries, but the ones that after the work after that, those weren't of a material nature, but they were made within the financial statements. When it comes to unrecorded misstatements, our total unrecorded misstatements amounted to 291,000, understatement of the county's annual surplus. So this was made in regards to the understatement of the accrual for the police funding related to 2021. We also recorded an accrual for the FRIA grant receivable, noting that your receivables were understated there for 62,000. So again, the net effect of this is an understatement of 291,000. So we don't feel that, if this was within the financial statements, that it would have a change anyone's opinion on the financial results or performance of the county for the year. The next one, Appendix 1, just required communication here for independence that we do not hold a financial interest, position, business relationship, or economic dependence. Appendix 2 is our management representation letter for Pat and Nicole to sign. Appendix 3, new and revised accounting standards. So there are 5 new accounting standards that will come into effect next year. Ones that will affect the county's financial statements, financial statement presentation, potentially be some changes there. Public sector 3450 financial instruments, you'll see changes to your accounts receivable disclosure, your investments or cash, any other financial instruments, as well as risks associated with financial instruments. So more disclosure there. And then the big one, asset retirement obligations. So here the county will be required to report legal obligations associated with the retirement of tangible capital assets and their solid waste landfill site. So Appendix 4 has a couple slides here in regards to asset retirement obligations. Mainly at this time, we're looking for our clients to provide us with their tangible capital asset listing, provide commentary beside their assets as to why they feel that this does not meet the definition, or potentially identify ones that could meet the definition so we can have a discussion about those, conclude whether it's yes or no, and if any further work needs to be done before the audit next year, so that we can ensure that the work can be performed by a third party to identify if obligations do exist. So this year you saw an increase to your reclamation liability. You saw that 5 million kind of hit your operations. When it comes to asset retirement obligation work, there'll be an obligation, but there'll also be an increase to tangible capital assets. So there is not a direct effect on the operations. Over time, the initial obligation that's booked, it increases over time. The change will go into your operations, as well as the amortization of the initial setup will come into operations. So you get hit twice almost as the obligation increases there. So that will allow you over time, when you expect to provide the remediation work or the retirement work, that you'll have funds hopefully set aside in order to do that work. So I think this is a lot of work to figure out if you do have any additional asset retirement obligations. It's not that these liabilities don't exist, because they do. It's about identifying them, getting them on the books, so that you can then in turn determine how you're going to pay for that retirement in the future and when you expect it to happen. So Again, it will be adopted this year, so we're expecting our clients to do work over this quite a bit. And yeah, we're looking to work with them and to make sure we get it done and on the books. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on anything in the audit findings report, but I can definitely address those.
Council. It's hard to have a lot of questions when we have a really good CFO. On my left, any Councilor Gerlich or Anderson? On the right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
2 minutes to spare.
Yeah. No questions. Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
Yeah,
Johnson,
thanks for
for
having
coming. I again apologize for the delay. I
That's okay. I feel like
miscommunication on my
had some
part. I didn't
important
realize you were
stuff.
here. I
That's all
wouldn't
right.
normally like to keep you waiting.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks again for having us. And yeah, we'll see you next year. And if you have any questions throughout the year, feel free to reach out or let Nicole or, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Take care. Thank you.
Council, let's take a convenience break until 20 minutes after 2. Oh.
Soon we'll have a follow-up on the assets of the Multiplex Society.
See,
Mr. Reeve, through the chair to you, Deputy Reeve Anderson. We'll be working on that right away. We'll, as soon as we can get to it, we'll get that information for yourself and for all the council, and we'll send it out by email. So it'll be Monday or Tuesday of next week. I'm just thinking we've got the executive committee meeting tomorrow morning, so she may not be able to work on it until Monday, but we'll get to you very quickly. Won't be any procrastination, no delay.
okay. Other discussion on the motion to adopt the financial statements as presented? Seeing none, if you're ready for the question on the adoption of the motion to adopt the 2020, to approve the 2022 financial statements as presented. All those in favor? And the count is 9-0. The motion is adopted. It would be appropriate now to take another motion to return to closed session, I think. No, we'll go into closed and then take a break. Councilor Cromwell has moved. We enter closed session. All those in favor? That motion is carried 9-0. And now let's take a break. 7 minutes. So we'll come back at 23. Okay, so regarding item number 12.1, Councillor Mins, you have.
I have a motion to deny the offer to purchase as presented.
Councillor Mins has moved that County Council deny the offer to purchase as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, if you're ready for the question on the adoption of the motion to deny the offer to purchase as presented, item 12.1, all those in favor? That is carried 9-0. The motion to deny is adopted. Item number 12.2, Councillor Chamzik.
To accept for information.
Councillor Chamzik has moved that we accept the report provided in closed session item 12.2 for information. Is there any discussion on that item? Seeing none, on the question of the adoption of the motion to accept the item for information as reported in 12.2, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried 8-1. The motion is adopted. On 12.3, I didn't write down who was making the motion to accept the report in 12.3 for information. There's two pieces because we accept the report for information and 5.2 is accept the budget. Because we got to deal with both numbers on the agenda. That's why I was. Okay. To accept the report, Councillor Cromwell has moved. We accept the information provided on advice from officials under 12.3 for information. All those in favor? That is adopted. The motion is adopted 9-0. That can Councillor. We'll do Councillor Gerlich's motion in conjunction with 5.2. So that concludes the items out of section 12. Remaining on our agenda, we had tabled item 5.2 until after the items in number 12 were discussed. As it relates to item 5.2, Councillor Anderson, you had a motion?
To adopt the budget amendment as presented in scenario 2 during closed session.
Councillor Anderson has moved that we adopt the budget revisions or amendments to the 2023 budget as presented in section 12.3. Or sorry, scenario 2 under section 12.3. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, on the adoption of that motion, all those in favor? That motion is count as 9-0 and the motion is adopted. Councillor Gerlich, you were going to make a motion.
Yes.
You had said you wanted direct administration to prepare a discussion paper for the June 20th Committee of the Whole regarding non-residential subclassifications. Is there any discussion on Councillor Gerlich's motion? On the question of the adoption of that motion, all those in favor? The count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted. That concludes the business of the April 27th County Council meeting. I think the meeting is adjourned at 3:47. Thank you.